Am I the asshole? ... Who am I kidding? I am definitely the asshole for sleeping with my ex-fiance's affair baby 23 years later. I am a 45-year-old guy, single, no kids, all names are fake. Okay, here's the short version. About 24 years ago, my then fiance, Ella, then 20, told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon. We did not set a wedding date yet, but now we wanted to wait till the child was 2 to 3 to be a part of the wedding party. When she was about 7 months pregnant, my world shattered. A friend, let's call him Luke, told me that the child was his and not mine. This led to a physical fight, and Ella took his side. We were done. I broke up with her then and there. She moved in with Luke. I did demand a paternity test. If the child was mine, I demanded to be in its life. After the birth of the girl, the test was done twice by a clinic I chose and one she chose. Turned out she was not mine. I was destroyed and left town. She could have her life. I didn't want to witness it. And now to the present. A month ago, my work brought me back to my hometown temporarily for 2 weeks. I ran into Ella and her daughter Nikki, 23, at an impromptu school reunion. Ella wanted to catch up. I wasn't angry anymore, but also did not see the point of being friends. I declined and mingled. After a while, I sat at a table nursing a drink. Ella had already left, and Nikki sat down at my table. She asked for 10 minutes to talk. She knew about my history with her mother, and it was clear that she resented her mother because ... Luke was also not her bio dad. Ella cheated on me with at least 2 people. 23andMe revealed the real bio dad. He had passed away already.
Damn.
When Nikki was 7, Luke found out and kicked them out, and it became the scandal. Nikki was bullied her whole life for being the affair baby. Luke's family disowned her. All of the cousins she was close with were gone all of a sudden. She blamed her mother. I asked her why she told me all of this. She said that I am someone who would understand this betrayal, and she is a product of that betrayal. She does not expect anything from me. She just needed someone to talk to that would understand. I felt for this kid. So we kept talking. We exchanged contact info and went our own ways. Next day, she wanted to talk more, to vent more. So we met in the bar of the hotel I was staying in. We had drinks and she ranted about her life. We talked until late, and when the bar closed, Nikki was too drunk to drive home. And since I didn't know where she lived, I couldn't even get her an Uber. So I took her to my room. I have the habit of always getting a room with twin beds. So she slept in one bed and I slept in the other. Nothing happened. The next morning, we had breakfast and she left while I went to work. A few nights later, I met Nikki in the bar because she had a lot to rant about. We also talked about her future, and she expressed interest to move out of town to escape the stigma of being the affair baby. Here is where I am the asshole. I made a move on her one night. At first, she walked away. I thought I blew it, so I went up to my room. An hour later, she sent me a text asking if I was in my room. As soon as I answered with yes, she knocked on the door. I was sober. She was sober. I had time to think. I could have sent her away, but I didn't. This is the daughter of my ex-fiance. If I had never found out Ella cheated, I would have raised Nikki as my own daughter. But I found out, and Nikki is not my daughter. I never saw her as a baby, never saw her grow up. I never saw her as a daughter. The first time I saw her was a week ago. So yes, I slept with her. And then again.
And then again. And then again.
Nikki is more vengeful than I am. She said she wanted to let her mother know, but she wasn't going to do it if I didn't want to. I was okay with letting her know. It took a little convincing in how we would let her know. We took a picture together, clearly in bed, clearly naked, but covered by sheets. She said it as a one-time view pictured her mother via Instagram message with the caption, "I can finally call him daddy." Ella called and they got in a fight. Then she got in a fight with me, still over the phone. I thought I was over the betrayal, but it seems like I had bottled up everything and now it finally came out. I had 4 more days there, and Nikki stayed in my hotel room those 4 days. Now I'm back home. Nikki is currently packing everything. She's going to move to another country to be away from her toxic environment. She will stay with me for a week, maybe more, before she flies away. She is going no contact with her mother. I have also blocked Ella on everything. Yes, Nikki and I are both broken. I refused therapy for years, but after that one outburst where I told Ella everything that was bottled up, I've decided that I do need therapy. I have suggested it to Nikki. She said that when she is settled, she will. I'm not even going to ask if I'm the asshole. I know I am.
Am I wrong for refusing to give my half-sister the something borrowed that she asked for? Story time. So my younger half sister Amy is getting married next year, and my dad and her stepmom are paying for the whole wedding. That's important for a bit later in the story. I was asked by Amy if she could borrow the necklace that I wore on my wedding day and that my mum owned before me, and it's also the necklace that she wore on her wedding day to my dad. This was already a sore topic, right? Because when my mum passed away, my mum wanted all of her jewellery to go to me, but my dad chose to give some of it to Amy, which doesn't really make any sense. He said that Amy was still a part of his family. He told me I had no say in the matter. He loved my mum and he wanted both of his daughters to have a piece of my mum. This man is crazy. So when she asked me to wear my mum's necklace on her wedding, not gonna lie, it stung a little bit. I told her she could not borrow that, but she could borrow some of my jewellery, you know, stuff that isn't connected to my dead mum. She told me that that wasn't fair and that she wanted to get married matching me on my wedding day. Girl, if you want to be me, just say. She asked me if I would feel different if my dad and her mum weren't paying for the whole wedding. She says, I know you don't like our parents, but I don't know why you're taking all of this out on me. I said, it's not that, babe. It's the fact that I don't want you to wear my mum's jewellery. You did not know her. I was like, I never wanted you to have anything from my mum anyway. That was all my dad's doing, not mine. So I wasn't, of course, going to give her then another piece to have. And then she says, well, I have just as much right to wear it as you do. This girl is infuriating. You don't accuse me of gatekeeping my mum. She says that she has every right to it as I did. And I asked her why she thought that was so. She said because everybody knows, including her mum, that my dad has only ever loved my mum and that her mum will only ever come second best. And I think what she was implying by this is sharing something from my mum that my dad loves means that my dad loves her more. That's some girl math that I can't get on board with. She said that she wants me to love her like a true sister, and only having my mum's necklace will show that. I still said no. So am I wrong here?
This is the story time of the worst man I ever dated. I tell a lot of fucking stories on this app, and I was always like, I'm never gonna tell this one, like, I'll save it for the book. Because it's pretty fucking bad. I don't know, something in me recently, I was like, I would have loved for somebody to talk about this while I was dealing with what I was dealing with. I was 16 years old, I had no idea what grooming was or any of those things, so I would have loved for somebody to fucking talk about that, so I could have known the situation I was in. When I was 16 years old, I met my ex-boyfriend who was 19 years old. Immediately red fucking flag, but when you're 16 years old, you think it's cool to date an older man. At least my dumbass did. I was like, no, he's older, like he's older. Little did I know what the fuck I had coming for me. This man was my first anything ever. This man was my first boyfriend, and I have never had an example of a healthy relationship growing up, so I was really fucked. I was fucked. Relationship started as any relationship should, him bitching about his ex-girlfriend to me, who was also very young. At first it was fun. I would sneak him into my house and I would tell my mom, I'm like, no, he's my environmental science partner. She's like, he has a fucking beard, Olivia. He's not your environmental science partner. Things took like a drastic turn on our first Valentine's Day together when I would not fuck him. I was a virgin. And talk about a fucking man-child. The way that he was like screaming and like hitting his steering wheel and like yelling at me like no other. That's when the verbal abuse started and the verbal manipulation of him being older. Use the whole like, I'm older than you, I've been in relationships, you've never been. It's fucking manipulation. I'm older, I've been in relationships, this is how it works, this is how things happen. Like, he was very much using my age against me. He knew more than me because he was older. I was just a high schooler. First of all, there's a lot of fucking things wrong with the relationship from the beginning. Number one, it's illegal. I was 16, he was 19. I had not even reached the age of consent yet. Number two, obviously the manipulation, the verbal abuse, which soon started to become physical abuse. Also, like, when I hit the age 19, that's fucking weird. Never in my life would I have dated a high schooler. Like, that is really fucking weird. That's not normal. This man had dropped out of college. He was working part-time, and this was in the middle of my parents' really bad divorce, so my mom really wasn't around a lot. Like I mentioned, I was a virgin. I was dead set on saving it till marriage. When I was 16 years old, I don't really know why, but at that time I was like, no, I want to save it till marriage. My boyfriend at that time told me that he was going to leave me if I didn't sleep with him, he was leaving. That was a really common thing. If I didn't do anything, he was fucking leaving. Like, if I didn't do what he wanted, no, he was leaving. And obviously, 16 years old, I'm in love with the man. Of course, like, I'll do anything so he doesn't leave. And of course, like, I thought I'd marry the fucker. I was like, sure, let me give it up to him because obviously, like, I'm gonna marry this man. So gave me a timeline. If I didn't do it within the timeline, there would be a problem. Listen, and the thing is, like, even if I went to my friends, we didn't know this wasn't normal. We were 16 fucking years old. Nobody even taught me what statutory rape was at that time. The relationship progressed and it just kept getting fucking worst. When I was 17, he came to me and he was like, my mom is kicking me out. I'm going to have to live in my car. I was like, no, you're not. You're gonna live with me. I was 17 years old living with my 20-year-old boyfriend. I was so fucking deep in the relationship. Like that was my first, I hate saying that, but that was my first love. I was so young, I didn't realize the abuse that was happening in front of me. Like, it was nothing for me to get screamed at. I was screamed at my entire life by my father. Like, that was nothing to me. And just like the negative, horrible things he would say to me. He would always be like, no one's ever gonna love you. I'm always gonna be the only one who can fucking love you. Also just like mentally took me down. He was like, no, you're too fat for anyone else to love you. Like, you're too ugly for anyone else to love you. All those things. I also financially supported this man. My parents got divorced. I picked up like several part-time jobs. So I was working my fucking ass off at the age of 17 just to be able to like survive. Like, if I wanted to go to dinner, if I wanted to go on a date, I had to pay for that. Or he had to go get his hair done, I had to pay for that too. I had to pay for all of these things. I don't know what the fuck he was telling me at the time, but all I knew is that he was like, no, like, you have to. He was like, this is how relationships work. This is what a relationship is. Like, you just don't know. You've never been in a relationship. Every single day was a fucking fight with him. I remember just like coming home from school, like having a good day, and there was something that he just wanted to scream at me about. Honestly, at 17, I didn't know how to leave. I didn't know how the fuck I was going to, one, leave this man who now lived with me. I was fucking terrified because I knew if I didn't do something, if I did something he didn't like, I knew what the repercussions were. Like, I knew it wasn't gonna be pretty. I also felt like nobody would fucking love me because that's what he told me for fucking years. And he had literally just like beaten me down mentally. Like, I quite literally thought nothing of my fucking self. And those are like the prime years where you're supposed to like love yourself and like look at yourself fucking highly. I was literally beaten down by a man who was supposed to love me. There I was at fucking 17 years old being a housewife to a whack ass motherfucker. I would literally come home from school, cook him dinner, and then I would go to my job. All this dumb fuck did was sit on his iPad and watch Netflix literally all fucking day. That's all he did. Every time I tried to leave him, it was always like, well, I have to sleep in my car. Like, I have to sleep in my fucking car. And obviously I was like, that makes me feel horrible. Like, I don't want anybody sleeping in their car. I felt so trapped in a fucking relationship. I didn't even know how to get out of it. I literally had no idea. I had quite literally no fucking confidence. I didn't know who to talk to about this situation. I was fucking terrified for my safety. I was going to be leaving for college soon, and I was like, I need to get the fuck away from this man. And so I left the man. I honestly genuinely think I trauma blocked me actually leaving him out of my memory because I've trauma blocked a lot of that. Now what I look at is more like the hardest part of the entire relationship was me now having to process what the fuck had just happened to me. I was 17. I had just left my 20-year-old boyfriend. Now I was fully processing everything. I'm not gonna lie to you. It took me fucking years to process everything. For the relationship, I felt a lot of resentment within myself. I was very disappointed in myself for the situation I had gotten myself into. Obviously with time, I learned to forgive myself, but then I really decided to start educating myself on just statutory rape, the age of consent, everything like that. And the more I was learning, the more I was realizing like I was in a really horrible situation. I also did the work within myself to like, I went to therapy, and I've talked about this a lot actually, of just like, I obviously picked someone like that because of like the daddy issues I had within myself and like the relationship I had with my father and the relationship I saw my father and my mother have. Like, obviously that wasn't going to breed a great relationship for me. I mean, it's been years of fucking work I've had to do on myself. I'll continue to do on myself. I just think the biggest takeaways from this situation is the fact of like, 16, when you're young like that, there should never be that big of an age gap, especially at the age of like 16 to 19, not okay kind of thing. I also have realized even like 20 to like 28 kind of thing, like that's also not okay. Now we're working with like the power dynamic because we do have somebody who's 28, who's older, who is easier for them to manipulate somebody who is young. Don't get me wrong, I've been in bigger age gap relationships where I've been 22 with a 32-year-old and it's been completely fine. There's something to be said from the ages of like 16 to I would say 21 where like you shouldn't be dating men who are like so much fucking older than you. I wish somebody at that time would have been like, yo, that's not fucking normal. So here I am telling you, like, if you're in that situation, that's not fucking normal and you should get out and you should get away. I also think being in a toxic relationship, you don't realize you're in a toxic relationship until you're gone. You don't realize how severe the effects of a toxic relationship are until you're out of it. You don't realize narcissist and how mentally destroying that can be to somebody, especially when there's like abuse mixed into it. None of the things I dealt with in that relationship are normal, healthy, or okay in any sort of way. So if you're dealing with anything like that, get the fuck out. Like, get the fuck out. The fact that a narcissist and an abusive person can have on your mental health is really terrifying. Like, it really is. I remember just being in the thick of that relationship, thinking I'd never fucking leave, thinking I'd never get out of here whatsoever. And I genuinely am like, thank God that I did. Like, I don't even know how I got myself to do it, but like, thank God that I did. And I also encourage you, like, if you've been in a situation like that, like, go to therapy or like get help. It is okay. Like, you should be talking about the situation that you were in, because it wasn't normal and it's really fucking hard. But I love you. And that's just a little bit of my experience with that whole fucking situation. There's a lot that I didn't include because it gets really fucking dark, and there's just no need for me to include that. But like, if you're in a situation like this or like anything similar to this, like, I highly recommend getting the fuck out, or like doing what you can to get out.
Tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would ever believe you. I don't think I've ever told this story before because I would sound like an insane person, but I know it happened. I want to be creeped out. I just watched the video of the girl, the Lyft driver in New Orleans, who says she picked up a vampire. I want more stories like that, but I'll tell you mine. When I was 7, my family was living in a suburb of Chicago, about 30 minutes southwest of the city. My parents were out. They went bowling every Friday night. So I know it was a Friday. Our babysitter, Maria, was over. She was a teenager, like probably like 16, 17 at the time, and my little sister was about 2. We lived in a split level. So my sister and Maria are like downstairs and I'm in the kitchen. I was looking out the back window, honestly, probably waiting for our little neighbor boy to come outside because I had a crush on him and I was always like running outside whenever I saw he would come out. But in our backyard, there was an apple tree, there was a lake, and then there was a fence separating our yard from the neighbor boy's house. It's dusk. The sun is like pretty much set. And I see a black panther jump over the fence and come down, stand underneath the apple tree. It was so tall that its shoulders almost came up to the first set of branches. Jet black fur. And we had a house cat, so I know what the house cat size is in relation to this thing. This thing was easily 6 or 7 times the size of our cat. So I start calling for Maria, like yelling at her to come up to the kitchen to see this black panther in our backyard. She was taking her time. My sister was crying and she was tending to her. I'm standing there mesmerized by this black panther, and it turns and it looks at me and it makes eye contact. And on its head, this thing was jet black, but on its head, it had a little patch of white fur just going right like this. And we just stare at each other for a good 5 seconds or so. I hear Maria stirring. She's coming into the kitchen, and as she's walking into the kitchen, the panther runs into the lake. I was like, there was a panther in our backyard. Maria's like, it was just a house cat. I'm like, no, it was a panther. Fast forward to later on that night, my parents still aren't home. I'm in bed. I hear our doorbell. It's probably close to like 11 o'clock because my parents were still out. They usually came home around like 1 in the morning. So naturally I hear the doorbell ring. I get out of bed. I go to the top of the stairs and I see Maria answering the door. And I'm like creeping on the stairs, and she lets this man in, and he's wearing all black. He was like very pale. And I hear him tell her basically that he was a traveler who like lost his way and he needed to use our phone. It was the 90s, so people didn't have like cell phones easily accessible, so he just wanted to use like our landline. So Maria lets him in. He's using the phone. It's very muffled. I can't hear what he's saying. I like remember the conversation, but I don't. That's where mine and this girl's stories are similar. So after he makes his phone call, he's like turning to leave. He walks past the stairs. He looks up at me because I'm still sitting at the top of it, and I see on his head he has a little patch of white hair in the same spot that the panther had. And he looks at Maria and he goes, "Thank you for your help. It's really easy to get lost in the shadows." And he leaves. Now this man shook me. Like I could not sleep that night. So when my parents got home, I was still awake in bed. I ran downstairs. I told them all about the panther. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination. And they were like, it was just a house cat. Like you're just letting your imagination get the best of you. And I told them about the man. They were pissed. They were fuming. They fired Maria for letting a strange man into our house, as they should have. But yeah, I don't know. I've looked into it. There have been tons of Black Panther sightings all over Illinois, close to Chicago, and yet the Department of Natural Resources maintains that there are no Black Panthers in Illinois.
Am I the astronaut for refusing to let my in-laws see my daughter after what they did during her birth? I, 29 female, recently gave birth to my first child, a beautiful baby girl named Lily. My husband, 32 male, and I have been over the moon, but our joy was ruined by an incident with my in-laws that I can't get over. For context, my mother-in-law, Karen, 58 female, and father-in-law, Bob, 60 male, have always been overbearing and intrusive, but my husband and I have tried to keep the peace. Throughout my pregnancy, Karen constantly criticized my choices, from my diet to my birth plan. She insisted on being in the delivery room, which I firmly declined. She threw a fit, claiming she had every right to be there as the grandmother, but I stood my ground. Good for you, OP. When I went into labor, my husband and I headed to the hospital. Everything was progressing normally until I was about to start pushing. That's when the door burst open and Karen and Bob barged in, having lied to the nurses to gain access. I was in the middle of a contraction in immense pain and suddenly had my in-laws in my face shouting encouragement and trying to film the birth on their phones. I was mortified and enraged. I screamed at them to get out, but they refused, saying they had a right to be there. My husband tried to get them to leave, but they wouldn't budge. The nurses and the other hospital staff had to physically remove them from the room. This caused such a commotion that my labor stalled, and I ended up needing an emergency C-section due to the stress and delay that they caused. After Lily was born, Karen and Bob were unapologetic. They actually had the nerve to post about the birth on social media, including pictures they took during the chaos without our consent. What? They announced her name and details before we had a chance to, and even worse, they shared a picture of me they clicked while I was in the delivery room earlier before the emergency C-section trying to push. I was pissed and heartbroken. This was supposed to be private and a special moment for my husband and me, and they completely violated that. I decided then and there that they wouldn't see Lily until they showed genuine remorse and apologized. When we got home from the hospital, they demanded to visit. I told them they were not welcome and explained why. Karen blew up saying I was being cruel and a bitch, denying them their rights as grandparents. My husband is supportive but torn because they are his parents. They've since started a smear campaign against me to the rest of the family, painting me as the villain who's keeping their grandchild away for no good reason. Now I'm getting calls and messages from extended family from my husband's side accusing me of being heartless and unforgiving. They say I should put it behind me for the sake of family harmony, but I can't. Also, my husband's two sisters are saying that if they were kind enough to forgive me after I threw a hissy fit and embarrassed and insulted them by getting them thrown out of the delivery room, then I should forgive them too. Every time I think about what they did, I get so angry and upset. I don't trust them, and I don't want them around my daughter until they truly understand and regret the pain they have caused. Am I the ass-enough for refusing to let my in-laws see my daughter first after what they did during her birth?
Am I in the wrong for telling my husband's entitled wannabe work wife to F off after she told me that I was trying to unalive my unborn child? For context, I, 30 female, and my husband, 30 male, are having a baby. I'm 8.5 months pregnant currently, so I'm not working for obvious reasons. But in my job, I earn significantly more than my husband. My husband works at a small company, and I really get on with most of his coworkers, apart from his one work wife, 24 female. I say work wife like that because he doesn't call her this despite her desperately trying to get this title. She's degraded me to him before. Her main complaint being, when I was working, I work too much and I'm clearly trying to emasculate him, which he very quickly shut down. Now that I'm pregnant and not working, she's voiced concern to him that I look too thin for a pregnant woman. I'm a healthy weight. She's just a larger woman, and I assume, while not trying to be egotistical, that she felt a bit jealous, probably hoping that I would get bigger than her during pregnancy. And her other concern being that I'm too old to be pregnant. She said both of these in creepy, subtle ways as to not look like the outright bad guy. Anyway, on to the incident. My husband's boss was having a garden party to which I was invited. During this event, my husband was having a glass of gin and tonic, one of my favorite drinks. He remarked to me that it was particularly good. I took his glass to take a small sip. I could see work wife's beady eyes on me as I handed the glass back. She then came rushing up to tell us about the dangers of fetal alcohol syndrome. I explained I just had a small sip and it's really no harm at all. But this wasn't enough for her just to leave it. She continued to go on about how worried she is, to which my husband defended me, repeating that it only had a tiny bit and there really is no harm. She seemed to be offended by this response and turned to me and said if I want to unalive my baby, I should just terminate. My husband and those in earshot were stunned by this. Before I could think about what to do, I instantly told her to F off and mind her own business. Luckily, no one heard, and she sort of just looked uncomfortable and left shortly afterwards. Following this very mild response in my opinion, and in the opinion of my husband and others, I've been told she sent my husband 7 emails calling me and him every name imaginable and tried to call 40 plus times, leaving a variety of insane voicemails. My husband has reported this to HR, and she resigned shortly after. Despite this, she won't stop calling and leaving abusive messages. We've tried blocking her, but she just makes a new account. Her persistence makes me worried about her mental well-being, and I feel like a bit of an a-hole for pushing this clearly disturbed woman over the edge. So, am I in the wrong?
Story time. So when I was in high school, my English teacher was trying to teach us some lesson. It was an introduction to whatever book we were reading. I don't remember. But she split up our class into 2 sections. This team got really easy questions. This team got the same type of questions, but they were more difficult. So for example, this team would get like a multiplication question. What is 5 times 3? The other team, the team that I was on, would then get a difficult version of the same question. So what is 63 times 19? Both of them are multiplication. One is clearly easier. But that was like the whole point, right? So when it's my turn, I go up to the front of the class, and the teacher turns to the other student, the easy team student, and asks to say her alphabet as fast as possible. I'm pretty sure the student took like 13 seconds to say the alphabet, just said the alphabet, right? Teacher turns to me and goes, all right, now I need you to say your alphabet backwards as fast as possible. It was at this moment in my young life that the sky opened up, the sun shone down directly on me, because little did this teacher know that I was prepared for this question. You see, when I was in the 2nd grade, I got sick for like a full week and I had to stay home. And while I was at home, there was a poster of the alphabet on the back of my bedroom door. And so what did I do? I memorized it backwards in the 2nd grade. Is there a logical reason that I did this? No, I was sick, and in my head I was like, that'd be a fun party trick if I could say the alphabet backwards. So the teacher turns to me and she goes, I'll give you a second. And I'm like, I'm ready. Start the timer. She's like, okay. Starts the timer. I whip through my alphabet backwards faster than anybody has ever done it. Her face shocked. It was amazing. The entire class claps because who can do that? I do like a little and go back and sit down. Did I kind of ruin the lesson that this teacher was trying to portray? Yes. But I was so prepared. And if you want to hear me say my alphabet backwards, leave a comment, because I will. I can do it so fast.
Am I wrong for not wanting to share my lottery winnings with my family? So I, 32 male, recently won a significant amount of money from the lottery. We're talking about life-changing money here. I've always been the kind of person who values my independence and self-reliance, and I've worked hard to get where I am today. I've always been financially stable, but this is a whole new level. My family has always been a bit, let's say, financially irresponsible. They've never been good with money, and they've always relied on others to bail them out of their financial troubles. I've helped them out in the past, but it's always been with the understanding that they would try to improve their financial habits. When they found out about my lottery win, they immediately started asking for handouts. They said that it's only fair since we're family and that I have more than enough to share. They've even gone as far as to say that I owe them because they've helped me out in the past, which is not true. I've always been the one helping them. I've tried to explain to them that I want to use this money to secure my future and that I can't just give it away, but they're not listening. They're calling me selfish and ungrateful, and it's starting to cause a lot of tension in the family. I feel like I'm in the right here, but the constant guilt tripping is starting to get to me. Am I the asshole?
Story time about how I found out my husband was gay on our wedding night. He worked for my dad, and my dad thought he was a great catch. He told my mom about him, and they set us up on a blind date. 3 things happened on this blind date. He wooed me by saying everything a 30-something-year-old woman would really want to hear, especially on a first date. First off, he started off by talking about how wonderful my parents are. Then he started complimenting everything about me. My clothing, my hair, my makeup, even the way that I spoke, and even the way that I was chewing my food on this date. And I became completely infatuated. We immediately start dating, but with a caveat. He tells me that he does not want to rush into a physical relationship because of his religious views. And so I accepted this. 6 months later, he proposed. And as you can imagine, I was desperate to get married. I really wanted that physical part of our relationship to happen. We had a serene beach wedding. Our closest friends and family attended. Both of our families loved each other. So we end the wedding night. We're headed to our hotel room. And as soon as I think we're about to get it on, he tells me that he's never actually been with a woman before. That he had only been with men before that. Number one, I was completely shocked by this. He had never told me this before, but I couldn't let it stop me. So as we tried to keep going, he just couldn't perform. That's when he turns to me and says, I actually don't think I'm very much attracted to women. Does that bother you? I literally fell apart in that moment. My new husband is now telling me he's not even attracted to me. My friends think he just wanted to marry me because of my parents' wealth and because he works for my dad. The marriage has not been consummated yet, and he said that he would try to make things work with me physically, but that I just need to give him time. My parents do not know, and I feel so ashamed. I don't know if it's me or if it's him. What should I do?
Am I the astronaut for not following my neighbor's tradition? I, female 25, have just moved into a neighborhood a couple of weeks ago, and so far has been very peaceful. From the neighbors that have come up to me, everyone has been very friendly and welcoming, which I really appreciate since I'm not from around the town. I have noticed that some neighbors have been having frequent parties the last couple of weeks, but I chalked it up to being celebrations since I know one neighbor's daughter just graduated high school and July 4th is coming up. I've been to some of these parties to get to know the other neighbors better, and one person who really stands out to me is this one neighbor, Melinda, not her actual name. At a neighbor's party, she came up to me and introduced herself, and we talked for a while. This is when I learned about the newest neighbor party. Apparently, the newest neighbor is supposed to throw a grand party showing off their home and entertaining the neighborhood as a whole thing. Melinda told me since I was the newest neighbor, it was my duty to do this. I thought Melinda was joking when she told me this, as it didn't make sense to me, and I laughed. This seemed to have made Melinda a little angry. And she said it was serious, and it was a tradition in the neighborhood, and that I had 2 weeks to host a party. This was 2 weeks ago. Yesterday was the day I was supposed to do this tradition, but I happily stayed in bed. Melinda and a couple neighbors came by and rang the doorbell, but I ignored them and enjoyed binge-watching childhood shows. I decided to go outside today, and Melinda came up to me furious, saying that I didn't do the tradition and that I was being a bad neighbor. The thing is, however, I asked some other people about this tradition, and they have heard some people do it, but mostly never really mentioned it to be a reoccurring thing that each new person in the neighborhood should do. I told Melinda that I wouldn't be throwing a party anytime soon as I didn't feel comfortable with the thought of people coming into my home, let alone me having to entertain them. Melinda got angry, saying that the neighborhood is like a big family, and stormed off. I let it go, but the neighbors that were there with Melinda at my house that night have been telling me I should have just done the party and that I'm leaving a bad impression. I think my reason is justified, but I'm not really sure. So, am I the astronaut?